Well, here she is, the completed machine. With the zip drive, of course. And moving on down, we have the completion of the case. It even comes with these easy to detach feet, which you have to detach if you want to tip it outside, which you will probably be doing to work on it. And of course, an official Microsoft sticker. Right now, I'm going to show you the boot process here. Mind your headphones, because it is a loud computer. So there's the VGA BIOS kicking in. And now begins the memory count. This is unskippable, though it does properly recognize the speed of the CPU. Right, here it will pause a bit, trying to identify the boot cards, the PCI cards. It seems to be misidentifying the amount of level 2 cache the CPUs have. However, every other metric properly recognizes it. I don't know if the BIOS is limiting what the computer has access to. It'll stay here a while until it tries to boot the first card in order, which is the IDE RAID card. Here we have the RAID card attempting to boot. However, there's no operating system found. These are not bootable drives. I have to have this one physically in the upper slot compared to the SCSI card, because if I don't, the SCSI card will boot, and this will actually, it won't boot at all. It won't load its ROM, and I won't have access to these additional hard drives. So I found that trying to get it to boot with a key press and then restarting the computer using Control-Alt-Delete tends to yield successful results. So now we wait for the boot process again, though it does skip the memory count this time. Occasionally it will do this error where it keeps trying to go back to the IDE card. This is the downfall of using two PCI cards and not using the onboard controllers for a bootable drive. Sometimes you have to play around with it a bit. Here we go, and after a bit of playing, it finally decides to jump to the Adaptec SCSI card. Adaptec cards, in my experience, these have been great. If you need an old SCSI card, you may not have heard that, but the about 4 gigabyte super big hard drive has begun to spin up, and it's identifying the SCSI devices. And there we go. It's listed as a compact model, this Seagate drive, and based upon its looks, it seems like it might have been purpose-built for something. So now we're starting Windows. As you can see, it really isn't that slow. It's certainly slower than my Pentium 4 3.8 gigahertz hyper-threaded machine. But it's not really that bad getting Windows started up. It just takes it a while to get fully settled once you're on the desktop. And I'll meet you then there where we're going to do some performance testing. Forgive the volume down here, but I wanted to show you the battery backup. This machine is pulling almost 250 watts from the wall. And since these are older and less efficient power supplies, I'm sure that it's using, the parts are pulling less than that, but that's how much it needs to pull from the wall. So yeah, it's not an energy efficient machine. I guess compared to a gaming tower it is. The computer is still settling itself after it's booted into Windows. But as you can see, the RAM usage is fairly well settled at 215,000 kilobytes of RAM, which I'm sure there's a bit of a conversion difference, but if we move the decimal place over, I'm sure it's about a 215 megs of RAM-ish, which is about half of what's in the system. There's also a 2 gigabyte page file, swap file that's on the IDE 750 gigabyte drive. It should perform better than if it was on the boot drive. This copy of Windows 2000 has been fully updated. I will have a link in the description for a video by a guy named Terabyte Coyote, who shows you how to fully update Windows 2000. Not just Service Pack 4, Update Roll-Up 1, and unofficial Service Pack 5, but how to get Windows Update connected again and pull all those updates. So this is fully up to date, and as you can see on the C drive, we've only used almost 3 gigs of space, and that includes, I think, the Opera browser, which either I missed a step or something and it installed on C when I would have put it somewhere else. So Windows 2000, very small footprint. All right, our first performance test will be MechWarrior 3, which I talk about MechWarrior 3 a bit in my Windows 98 video, which will probably come out after this because I'm having trouble uploading it. We're trying it at high settings. This is a Windows 95-98 game running at 640 by 480. You might see that the game is a bit on the choppy side. The next test here will be MechWarrior 4 at 640 by 480, 32-bit colors, and medium settings. I will say that, at least with MechWarrior 3, CD audio only worked through the DVD drive using digital. Both CD drives fail to output sound through analog, even with the audio cable connected. I suspect they just might have a problem. I will try hooking it up to the DVD drive to see if it can play analog audio. So I'm not sure if you can tell, but the game is fairly choppy. And the graphics card in this machine is more than capable of handling this game. So it just seems to be a CPU bottleneck. Now, how much of that is due to the cache not being recognized and how much is just because it's an old architecture, I'm not sure. But I will say this game's required specifications are a 700 megahertz processor. So this game is doing pretty well, all things considered. You can see at the tail end, this was the tail end of MechWarrior 4, both CPUs were being used. So I'm not sure if MechWarrior 4 can actually utilize more than one, or whether it was one was the game and one was trying to manage background tasks. Okay, so as far as games, I probably didn't have the best selection, but they performed well enough. You could make them work. If you tweaked with settings more, they would work better. Potentially there's some overhead from one running Windows 2000, which is a bit heavier than well, Windows 98 would be, and a bit heavier than probably Windows NT 4 is. So you might have better results using a different operating system. But the system did pretty well, all things considered. The video card probably isn't being stressed at all. But the point of getting a later graphics card than, say, a Voodoo 3 was the hope of potentially playing video files. So we're going to run some tests with VLC. I've tweaked the settings to ensure that it's putting everything into performance rather than quality, which is a sad thing to say. And so now, and full hardware acceleration, full buffering. So we'll see what happens. These files have been put on the G drive, which is the 750 gigabyte ID hard drive. So it should move the data faster than if it was on the main drive. So at 144p.
How does your computer put on such a fantastic light show with all those LEDs? Are the lights fade?
So it's a bit choppy, and the color is weird. But it's playing. It seems very early internet, but it's certainly not smooth. Hopefully Linus Tech Tips doesn't sue me. Now 240p.
does your computer put on such a fantastic light show with all those LEDs? How do the lights fade and change
We got some
colors?
audio issues.
How about pixies with an
Let's open Task Manager.
which is coordinated precisely so that your friends are impressed with your RGB lighting?
All
Well,
right.
the reality is a bit less fantastical, but with the recent unionization of pixies,
It's definitely using a lot of resources.
practical pulse width model.
360p.
How did the computer put on such a fantastic light show? With
And
all those
the video
LEDs?
fails
How
to,
the lights
it gets gummed up.
change color?
So can't go any higher than that. Right, so the dual Pentium Pro machine is unable to really play videos of any resolution. Probably not a big surprise. But can it play a DVD? In this case, Downton Abbey. Right, let's get that first copyright strike, folks. When putting in a DVD, this error pops up, saying that there's no DVD decoder. In the past, when I used Windows XP as my main machine, I could have swore I was using Windows Media Player to play a number of DVDs, but I could be mistaken. I didn't play them very often. So this seems to be a bit of an issue. But VLC can certainly play DVDs. And the graphics card, as far as I understand it, should have been from the era where it could actually play DVD. So let's fire a VLC, see what happens. All right, the DVD menu seems to have appeared, though the coloring is a bit on the dark side. When we click part 1, we'll see what happens. Not sure if you can hear that, but audio is playing and the video really hasn't shown up. So it's sort of the same thing as the high resolution video file. Well, your next thought for testing might be web browsing, and that's certainly a possibility. For defense, we have Spybot Search and Destroy and ClamWin Antivirus. They are very functional on older machines. In particular, Spybot 1.6.2 still receives updates and works on Windows 98 natively, and 2000, of course, natively. ClamWin is open source and designed to be compatible with almost all versions of Windows, it seems, that I've tried it on. It's not an active antivirus, but it does give you at least a scanner. It's something. Now, it's taken a while to get Firefox to open up, but we do have the most current form of Firefox, and I'll show you that once it's ready. All right, Firefox is getting closer to being loading up the Google page. We'll open up our same task manager, so you can see that we're running approximately the same system here. And we'll go to Help. Once it decides to let me. And About Firefox. So it's looking for updates. It usually doesn't find one, but my other Windows 2000 machine has updated itself up to 48 point whatnot, and this computer may end up doing it. So a pretty dang modern web browser, and just for the proof we're on the same machine, we'll minimize Firefox, and we'll be back on the same desktop. And there we go. Pop back in. Let's see if we can go to a website. I also have an old version of Opera and RetroZilla on here. So now let's go somewhere that at least isn't too intensive. All right. Now, right now, I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the background because the processors are being pinned. As you can see, I already typed all this in, and it's slowly filling in here. Perhaps part of its update service is still trying to run. Now that it's decided to give me the option to click on something, over there, and it might take a little while, but we'll be on our way to Wikipedia. All right, here we are on Wikipedia's English page, which once again I'll minimize. And we're there. We have a fully functional modern browser. Slow? Yes. I was able to post on Facebook with it, but it took a while to get it done. So now let's close out of Firefox, and we'll contrast that with maybe a bit of RetroZilla. RetroZilla has been designed to work with Windows 95 and NT4, but it also works on 98, and it works on 2000. But its ability to render video, I think, is pretty well shot, even on a faster machine. But notice how much quicker the search function is. Oh, I'll accept the certificate. Alright, RetroZilla did not like the fonts on the multi-language Wikipedia start page. However, the search bar functions, and you can just go to whatever page you want to go to, and everything's fine. RetroZilla is a kind of a work in progress, but it's an option for simple websites at the very least. Okay, so now I've selected to shut down the computer, and you're about to see something I think a lot of you probably haven't seen in a long time, and probably not with this operating system. So we're shutting down Windows 2000. You see that? The only time I remember seeing that is on Windows 95 or Windows 98 on certain computers where there would need to be a patch to actually get the shutdown feature to work. This motherboard is so old that it doesn't have the ability to be shut down by the software. So we have to use the good old-fashioned power button to do it. And it is a really satisfying power button on this tower, by the way. I hear that hard drive slow down. So what are my final thoughts on this project and the components used here? Well, the case I think is an excellent case. I really do love it. It's very solidly built. Everything seems like it was expected to last a long time. The power button is a very sturdy button. It's far better than the button on my main machine now, and that's a nice case. It's a great tower. The optical drives, they all function very well. The analog audio doesn't seem to want to go through either of these. The sound card, which is a Sound Blaster, probably a Creative Vibra 16, has only one connector for analog audio, and connected onto either one of these, I can't get the CD audio to work. This one has the option to go digital, but doesn't seem to function. This one, it says does not work with digital audio. I will have to try the DVD drive next, but it seems to work at least with digital audio enabled. So those, I think, were good. I like the looks of it. I love my 5 1/4 floppy drives, and of course I have a spare zip drive. The power supplies, while it is very neat to have dual redundant power supplies, they're clearly built for a server type environment, and so they're really quite loud. They move a lot of air. They are definitely pulling a lot of air through them. But that loudness makes it a bit unpleasant. The motherboard. This is probably the key thing to really talk about. The hard drive choice is, you can make a minor change here, but the motherboard's the key. The Micronix W6Li or Lightning. This seems to be a little more of an obscure board. I would suggest, if you are planning on building a dual Pentium Pro system, maybe looking more into I think it's the Intel PR440 FX board. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. Something from a bigger manufacturer, something more well known. You can't seem to find a BIOS update for this board, and there's been warnings that if you think you found it, it's probably for a revision board that used a different ROM chip, and so you'll end up bricking the board. The board takes a while to boot up. I'm fine with the memory count, but it takes a while to initialize the cards. The BIOS options are fairly limited. It seems to be misreporting the L2 cache size. Whether or not that's affecting performance, I don't know. But other than that, other than those features, and of course this one is the more stripped down model that was missing USB and missing onboard SCSI, it really hasn't been that bad. And I will say that Windows 2000, even on this kind of more obscure board in a setup that Windows 2000 probably didn't want to be on, it has been rock solid. This machine has been perfectly functional. Everything it has done great. There's been no operating system crashes. When programs have crashed, it's been expected. Firefox crashed when I tried to play a YouTube video because there's not a whole lot of hardware behind it to make things work. It has done its job. The only real issue, other than the mystery potential of performance being lost through the BIOS not recognizing the cache, is the use of two controller cards, one for IDE, one for SCSI, and making the secondary card the bootable one. You see, as I mentioned before, if the SCSI card is physically placed higher up on the motherboard, it will boot first. But the IDE card, with all the extra storage on it, the 750 gig and the 200 gig hard drive, won't fully initialize, so I won't have access to those drives anymore. So I have to initialize IDE and then restart the machine. If you do a software restart, it keeps working. It's fine, only when you do a cold start. Other than that, everything is fine. A new USB card will be coming because the one I wanted to use didn't work. And I'll try putting that in while I have USB. I also have a SCSI 80-pin drive, which I will use an adapter down to 68-pin and power and see if that improves things. It's a Seagate Cheetah. I think it's a 10,000 RPM, 300 gig. That will probably replace the 200 gig, and I may shift things over to it. Because the more storage I can put on the SCSI card, the better. I also want to briefly mention that the way the ISA card is placed, and I had to put it on the bottom slot, and the way the Ethernet port is placed, the little clip part is upside down, so it's pointed towards the bottom of the case. With that lip of the case down here, it's very hard to remove the Ethernet cable. So I got a little extender, so this machine will just permanently have a rat tail on it, like everyone's favorite Jedi. So as a final wrap up, would I do this again? Yes. Would I suggest building a dual Pentium Pro machine? I say yes, though I would probably recommend using an early version of Windows. Windows NT4 is probably the best one to choose for this sort of setup. 98 can only use one CPU, so you're pretty stuck with NT. And maybe use a more mainstream board. And I'd also like to apologize for how long it's taken to upload videos recently. My Windows 98 video is very long, and due to its length, it takes many days to upload on my internet speed, and then there's been issues around the 80% mark. YouTube will just say there was an error, try again later, and you have to start over. So hopefully this video will be a bit shorter. As far as future videos are concerned, this is my Windows 2000 machine that runs a Pentium 4 hyper-threaded. It's a snappy little machine. And this is my DOS machine, which is definitely overpowered for being a DOS machine. It's basically a very solid Windows 98 machine. It probably run Windows 2000 excellent as well. The Windows 98 machine is back there, which has its own video, which is ready to be uploaded. And the XP machine, which uses the same case as the 2000 machine. I do love this case. I'll talk about it in videos. And I do have more things to talk about too. Over here we have a case for a future build, an old Dell that has become a Linux machine, my Latitude D610, my most powerful laptop. Back there is an XPS 410 that has been upgraded, and then we have a little compact internet machine running Windows 98. I have these and other projects coming in the future, so stick around. I'd also like to extend an invitation for you to join the Retro Machines group on Facebook. One of the head guys is Victor Bart, who now has his channel has been renamed to Retro Machines, but he's there. Phil's Computer Lab is there. There's some of the big guys are with us. I'm just a very minor character, but I'm there too. So please stick around the channel, subscribe if you want to see more of these projects whenever they eventually make it here. And have a great day. Join us on Facebook, and hopefully I'll see you around. Bye.